Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to today's video where we are finally putting Terran Malicos to the test. And let's just say initial impressions of him in Grand Arena seems like he is gonna be manhandling the competition inside of the Grand Arena atmosphere. Like we kind of predicted before we even got into Omicron gameplay, this guy already wasn't having a lot of counters. Seer Junda already didn't have a lot of counters, and Malicos is just dialing it up a couple of notches. Ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna get straight into the gameplay because literally I have an hour worth of gameplay that I'm somehow gonna condense all at once for you guys. So let's hop into it. Big thanks to the entire community. There's been a lot of conversation, a lot of gameplay that the community's been sharing to try to get an understanding of Malicos. This is really the only way we can really get the full picture. So big thank you to everyone. You're gonna be seeing credits to every single gameplay we're gonna see today, and really importantly, you're going to be seeing how many Omicrons are on Malicos. Definitely check that because there's a lot of gameplay. So without Omicrons, and I thought maybe, oh, Gas is going to win easily, then I know, oh, there's not even an Omicron on Malicos. So make sure you're double checking the Omicrons you're seeing on the opposing Malicos. You're going to see a variety of 1 to 3 Omicrons on Malicos. Let's start off with what I saw people utilizing him on offense in Grand Arena. Barbarossa has a battle up against Lord Vader, as well as up against the latest Galactic Legend Leia Organa. Now it's a crazy team. Bringing in Maul, it's not a bad use of Maul. The problem is if you use Maul inside of this team, that means you're not really getting the full benefit out of Lord Vader, and Lord Vader, he just desperately needs Maul to do his thing. But if you're someone that maybe just doesn't have Lord Vader, but you have Maul, and you don't really want to use your Mandalorian, this is a fantastic spot to use Malicos, because remember, now that we have the Omicrons turned on, anytime an unaligned force user is using a special ability, Malicos is always assisting. So when Maul does his opening jazz hands ability, Malicos is constantly coming in and doing nasty amounts of damage, y'all. So keep that in mind when you're using Maul. You know, I don't see myself using this, but it's cool to know that we see some really cool combos of Malicos and Maul. Unfortunately, I was not able to find any gameplay of Lord Vader with Maul and Malicos. I heard rumors that it seemed like it was pretty good as well. I would assume so. Malicos is bringing heavy amounts of damage for the Seer Junda lineup, because remember, the standard lineup before Seer Junda, Kylo Ren and Mask, it was Baby Kylo, and then Ahsoka and Cal was kind of the general Seer Junda lineup. And of course, sometimes you might not have Kylo Ren and Mask, sometimes you might put Cal with Rey, but that was overall kind of like the best pre-Malicos lineup. Malicos in every shape, form is just a complete upgrade over whatever that fit spot might have been, which usually went to Baby Kylo Ren. So let's kind of break down what we're seeing on the offensive side of things. For me, I'm putting this team on defense. This team is going to be on defense, kind of like what I expected. It's Darth Malgus-ish, where there's not a lot of solid counters for this. Although, speaking of Darth Malgus, it seems like he might be one of the staple counters to take on this team, so that makes me happy. But otherwise, the Traya matches are scary. The Gas matches are scary. There's not a lot of off-meta ways non-galactic legends wave happening, and that's what we said. Just like Malgus, I think Malicos is going to be kind of in a similar vein, where if you're not using a galactic legend, it's going to be a little sketchy. Potentially. Regarding offense, though, if you are kind of in the market for that, you know, we saw a couple of Galactic Legend matchups where Malicos was able to win up against Rey, Lord Vader. We have some footage up against Traya, which is going to be important because we're going to look at a variety of Traya on defense gameplay, and that's probably the counter people want to still work. I have some wins, I have some losses. It's just really sketchy, kind of like how Traya versus Malgus was. Again, this is a very Malgus-like team. Gas was kind of struggling up against Malgus. Traya, you know, is kind of a struggle up against Malgus. It's kind of a similar story to here. It's the new Malgus team, ladies and gentlemen. So if you're going to use that on offense, I can feel confident you're going to be able to beat a lot of teams. But realistically, this needs to go on defense because of the fact you want, again, at the end of the day, you want people feeling the pressure. Like they have to waste a Galactic Legend on a non-Galactic Legend team. That's going to feel pretty crazy. And even on some of the Galactic Legend matchups I have, we saw that even teams like Master Luke was sometimes losing to these Malicos lineups. So just, you know, even if you are bringing the Galactic Legend game, which I think you're gonna be fine, if you're bringing Sith Eternal and stuff, just know there's definitely some risk that could be involved with this. When we're looking at defense, finally, remember, before even Malicos came, things like Commander Luke Skywalker weren't even a legitimate counter to the Seer Junda. And now with Malicos, it's even trickier. Now, of course, there might be some Datacron interactions that come and go some seasons that might give us some extra opportunities to make Malicos even better, or maybe even make the counters to Malicos even better. But what does make him better are the Omicrons. So if you watched the video the other day, the pre-Grand Arena Omicron gameplay, we said the Omicron's gonna make a huge difference. He was all right before the Grand Arena Omicrons, but the Omicrons make such a bigger difference. And I recommend in that video, you want to get the first Omicron being Echo of the Fallen Order, because you're going to be able to, first off, just prevent revives. period, on the enemy team. No matter who's getting the kills, there's no reason. This hurts Riva, hurts Sion. It could hurt Drogon in a Leia crew potentially. And on top of that, the first one of their dark side of lights at online forces allies reduced to 1% health. If Malicos is active, he saves them. Like Generate Revan, they get damage unity, take a bonus turn, they get critical chance of critical damage of tons of offense. And then of course, while Malicos is active, another big thing, anytime an enemy with less than 100% turn is getting bonus turn meter, he's getting tons of Edge of Madness. The Edge of Madness really just ramps up drastically on this team. And he does true damage to the opposing enemy, which can't be evaded, and it can't also defeat the enemy. And then that second Omicron, the unique abilities are really important for this guy. Strength is power. With that Omicron, Malicos gains more Edge of Madness on us, and he starts the battle with critical hit immunity. Now, when we get to the gas segment, this has been the biggest struggle for gas. If he can't critically hit, that's kind of the bread and butter of General Anakin Skywalker. Critical immunity is pretty crazy on this team. Plus, Malicos gets the extra mastery, which really juices up the damage. He hits nasty in this gameplay. Like we said, the 50% mastery is pretty big because his mastery is pretty much offense focused. He gets the 100% max health, and he's kind of like General Anakin Skywalker. Anytime he's using the ability, he just does his basic Dark Strike. So he's kind of like multiple hits onto the field. Then he gets the protection up. And then anytime an unlike forces use the special ability, Malicos is going to be assisting, which we see that plays a big role. Ahsoka Tano, big hit, boom, Malicos comes in. Maul comes in, boom, big hit for Malicos, especially when Maul takes like 5 turns in a row. It's kind of nuts. And of course, Die Whelp, which is probably the last Omicron you're going to apply, but you're going to want to have it. There's not a lot of Omicrons to skip out on here. He does massive amount of damage, extra true damage on his buff immunity, healing immunities, and on top of it, he can ramp up his critical damage and offense. So with all that stuff, this is where the things kind of get sketchy when you're trying to beat him. Traya, now the other day in my Grand Run, I was able to beat Malicos, but it was up against 1 Zeta, 1 Omicron, so I don't want to get too cocky. When seeing other people's experiences that existed out there, you got to be careful. Even when people brought in Savage and Talon to play it safe, it was just sometimes not enough. Malicos would come in with this big Die Whelp ability and just like dump like 100, 200,000 damage right at the very beginning of the battle. There aren't many characters that can do that in the game. Not even sometimes Galactic Legend Supreme or Kyle Ren can dish out that damage within the first few moments of the battle. Because remember, with that Cere Junda Omicron, which we didn't even mention was turned on now rather than the previous gameplay, Cere Junda wraps up the damage on her unaligned Force user crew. So the opening play from Malicos is quite deadly, and the fact you can't stun him or anything of that matter to really stop him in those opening plays is quite scary. So it's Traya kind of feels like it might be sort of like the Traya versus Malgus kind of way. It's very sketchy, but when you get the opportunity, hopefully get that quick cooldown reduction on Nihilus because he passed that threshold on the Traya Omicron, get that quick opening insta kill, call it a day. Another thing to keep in mind though, some of the gameplay we saw where Traya did win, they didn't have like the ideal lineup. Kylo Ren unmasked. I know people don't like hearing it. In my neck of the woods, no one releases Kylo Ren unmasked for Supreme or Kylo Ren, so it seems a little absurd for people that might not be in that world yet. But if you're someone that's down below a bit more, maybe early Kyber, maybe a Rhodium, and you still use Kylo Ren unmasked with Supreme or Kylo Ren, just know if you do want to use Cere Junda, I do feel like not having Kylo Ren with the pre-taunt, that's a big deal. A pre-taunt forces Traya to throw an isolate on him instead of somewhere else, where you have to put all your damage in Kylo Ren unmasked instead of someone else. It's kind of a big trade-off not to have it on your team. So hopefully you can afford the Kylo Ren unmasked. It's not that big of an ask. It's not like asking for them all. Kylo Ren unmasked, for me personally, you're going to see that in there. And it's way too important of a character to open up the battle. Looking at General Anakin Skywalker, another team that looked like I was kind of getting through pre-Omicron. When Malicos has those Omicrons turned on, the more you see, the less likely it looks like General Anakin Skywalker's going to work. Basically, the only win condition I see General Anakin Skywalker having is that the Malicos AI is super dumb. They're going to accidentally hit the sacrifice on 5 supercharge the stats, and luckily all the buffs on the Malicos Cere Junda team ramp up General Anakin Skywalker's damage, and eventually you might be able to nuke the team. But if they have critical hit immunity, that's really limiting how much damage you can deal down. And of course, he could save someone. So the second you're trying to kill someone, boom, he'll save them right away. The damage unity is even a bigger problem. So again, it sort of feels like, Gas versus Malgus was sort of a counter, at least in 5v5. I don't see this really working in 3v3 potential, but in 5v5 at least, Gas can get through Malgus, but you're not leaving with a lot of banners, especially at the very opening play. Malicos seems he just completely decimates all the protection on the 5 first team. So the second Gas gets down, there's not a lot of time you have for those clones to really stick around in battle. So use at your own risk. I don't know if I'd want to use General Anakin Skywalker. My first go-to is probably going to be hoping that Traya handles Cere Junda, because that was already sort of my earmarked counter for Cere Junda, unless it was a really bad Cere Junda line that maybe I can get lucky with bounty hunters. Overall, for me, when I'm looking at Traya versus Gas, if I'm seeing a 3 Omicron Malicos, if I do use Gas, I don't got anything else. I'm in a really desperate situation. It is not going to be a clean battle. The amount of damage. Again, I know I sound like a broken record. I'm like sitting watching this gameplay. It's like, holy crap, this guy is dropping bombs on this team. And even when Gas gets a few opportunities of getting up, man, you know, it's just going to be messy. He might get up a few times, and the Malicos AI is just they're a little dumb, and you might get that chance to squeeze through. But I think the more Omicrons you have, some of this Gas gameplay isn't against the maxed out Omicron situation. It's gonna be a little dicey, so it just blows my mind that General Anakin Skywalker. I mean, here's the upside to all this. Yeah, maybe it's not the best counter in the world against Malicos, but it's nice seeing that if you're really trying to stay away from the Galactic Legends being used on Malicos, because remember, at the end of the day, when you're on offense, you never want to use a Galactic Legend, a non-Galactic Legends team, unless the win's in sight. You got so much firepower left over. And when you're on defense, you want your opponent to use a Galactic Legend up against the Malicos. So, I mean, if Gas can somehow eke his way through, cheese his way through, maybe someone doesn't have good mods or all the Omicrons put out, it's nice seeing that General Anakin Skywalker, to this day, can still try to keep up. And at the end of the day, a win's a win. You know, but just seeing the other battles I'm seeing with all the right compositions, the mods, the relics, and especially the Omicrons, that anti-critical immunity, it's probably going to be a no for me, Chief. Probably going to have to be a no for me. But we have other opportunities that I think might be afforded to us here. You know, remember pre-Omicrons, we had Gas, Traya. It looked like maybe Reva could work. Darth Malgus could work. Well, it gets a little skinnier at this point. We have some footage out there. Some people are able to try Starkiller versus Malicos. Unfortunately, couldn't find anyone using Malicos with Starkiller. So that, again, we're just getting the ball started and rolling here. We don't know what other opportunities there are. We do have some stuff at the very end. People tried Malicos to 3, which doesn't seem like it really was actually that good in the end, unfortunately. But Starkiller versus Malicos, Cere Junda on defense. We have a loss, and we also have a win. There's a lot of problems working up against the Starkiller lineup. You got to roll a turn meter train, right? And the more turns you take, the more Cere Junda is going to wrap up. The other problem is you have all this foresight. You got tenacity up. Crazy amounts of durability. Even when Starkiller pulled that Star Destroyer out of the sky, still no dice. That's pretty crazy because you can't even stun them. But we do have some opportunities where we did get some wins up there. However, do keep in mind, as I left a note, it was only one Omicron that was on the Malicos team, and there, unfortunately, this isn't like, you know, maybe like a Reva or maybe, you know, Darth Malgus where you can get away with 1 or 2. Realistically, you are missing so much without the other Omicron. So again, when you're watching gameplay, trying to figure out your own counters, or you're just about to fight someone, just know that when they're missing Omicrons, Malicos that is, that's big chunks of viability being left on the table. So Starkiller was before a pretty usable counter against Cere Junda. That was kind of one of the staple go-tos, which is still pretty crazy pre-Malicos. Most people would throw a Starkiller at him, but it makes sense. It's kind of a tough team to beat prior to the entry of Malicos. For me, though, probably a little too much. But Darth Malgus. Now, you know me, Darth Malgus has been going through a lot of change. He went from pretty much where Malicos is now, that's kind of like almost Galactic Legend on defense. Not a lot of crazy, consistent off-meta counters potentially to the guy that's in the non-Galactic Legend realm. And now Cal Kestis came around, and pretty much Malgus is, yeah, his time has kind of come and gone for the top game. But of course, you know, a lot of people can still use Malgus on defense. But the time of Cal Kestis is becoming like wildfire. The next time he's introduced again, it's gonna be, you know, the drill. We talked about this meta situation of Darth Malgus. But for me, if I can't put Malgus on defense because I don't want Cal Kestis to get this easy win against him, Malgus seems to be a fairly good counter up against the opposing Malicos that's now taking Malgus's throne. Man, a lot of Maliguses being thrown out there. Now, of course, do keep in mind, some of these battles don't have like this super ideal lineup. Some had 9 Sister in because they didn't want to give up Kylo Ren and Mask. Again, Kylo Ren and Mask makes a big deal because that means Darth Revan can't put fear in the whole team. Only on Kylo Ren and Mask and Cere Junda. So put a pin in it. But I think if let's say Trey is not consistent enough, Malgus might be consistent enough, and that's fine with me. This blew my mind. Reva she was pretty all right against Malicos, and she didn't even have her Grand Arena Omicrons turned on when we first did our initial testing. But now that she has her Omicrons turned on, Malicos has his Omicrons turned on. Holy cow, Malicos has so much baked in that works against the Reva team, especially Seven Sister, actually makes this battle very complicated because you're constantly getting this damage immunity on the Malicos team. Because remember, when you get healing immunity on this team, you get damage immunity, and there's so much healing immunity out of here. And when Deathmark applies because someone's getting a cleanse, now you're stuck behind someone of Deathmark and damage immunity. It's pretty crazy how powerful Malicos was, even up against Reva. Again, nuts. So that was the thing. I thought maybe it could be consistent. Maybe you got to run it without Seven Sister, and even so, that's sketchy. But what about some Jedi stuff? So pre-Grand Arena, we saw that Jedi Knight Revan, the Jedi Knight Luke and Cal, it got the job done. Again, pre-Omicrons. With the Omicrons, though, I'm not too sure if you're going to get, like, super consistent wins with it. But we do have here, for example, footage of Jedi Knight Cal Kestis. At least you get the insta-kill on Malicos, and then you just got to deal with the normal Seared Unity, which, granted, still requires kind of a lot. So, maybe there's something on the table. Maybe Jedi can, eke out something. It's probably, again, when I'm doing, like, a hierarchy of things, I'm happy I'm liking maybe a possibly from Malgus. That's like, Jedi probably below Traya, probably below General Anakin Skywalker with what we've seen so far. But, we're going to keep it open. Never know. Maybe if someone has less Omicrons, it'll be a little bit easier. Maybe there's some Datacron interaction that might make it a bit easier. So there's just getting Malicos out might be something to look forward to. But let's look at some Galactic Legend matchups. This blew my mind. Now, you would think you'd be pretty safe throwing a Galactic Legend up against Malicos. That was kind of the deal with Malgus, right? Before Cal came out, it's like, yeah, I'll just use my Sith Eternal. Yeah, I'll use my Jedi Master Luke. Yeah, Supreme Leader Kylo Ren. Jedi Master Cal. Pretty much every Galactic Legend, for the most part, was able to beat Malgus. There was maybe a timeout risk for Lord Vader versus Malgus, oddly enough. But at least here, I think you're going to have that similar opportunity where it seems like Galactic Legend should be able to beat Malicos, but we see it, for example, don't get too cocky. We have a situation where Jedi Master Luke Skywalker, this dude that was trying to make it work, he's like, I'm fine. His Master Luke got absolutely destroyed, so maybe he didn't bring in enough good Jedi. Of course, we're all experiencing this for the first time together. So, of course, the strategy is going to get fine-tuned for us fighting Malicos, but also we're going to fine-tune the Malicos team. This is our first round of it. So I do think Jedi Master Luke should be able to handle it. But I got to say, I don't know if you're going to be able to get away with, how do I say this nicely, lesser powerful Jedi. It feels like you might need to have Jedi Luke. You might need to have Jedi Revan, especially to help your team get around that taunt. You might need to make sure people can survive long enough. Because again, Malicos, with him dropping literal meteors from the sky, it feels like he's dishing out some pretty solid damage. So if you are going to bring the Galactic Legends in, make sure you don't cheese it up too much. Although I do think there might be other Galactic Legends that might be a bit safer, might be a bit cheaper than Jedi Master Luke Skywalker. And that's what we're going to maybe talk about Supreme Leader Kylo Ren and Sith Eternal, which I think Sith Eternal, Sith Eternal was kind of our go-to Malgus kind of because it was one of the cheaper Galactic Legends to throw. You just throw some mishmashy things. You don't have to give up like Jedi Knight Revan, Jedi Knight Luke, or Commander Tano, or Maul Lord Vader, or something like that. Just Sith Eternal with some random Sith, and it kind of gets the job done. So I think a lot of people will be maybe satisfied with that. But again, if you're throwing a Galactic Legend up against a non-Galactic Legend team from a strategic standpoint, that's not a good scenario to really have to be in. You want to be able to get through a team without having to use a Galactic. You'd rather use Sith Eternal up against maybe another Galactic, maybe Jedi Master Kenobi. If you've got to use it here instead on a Malicos team with a couple of marquee legacy characters and this one Conquest character, it's not a good feeling. So that's a pretty big feat if we are going to have to move into a world where Sith Eternal or some Galactic Legend is going to be needed. Kind of like Darth Malgus. For a whole year, Darth Malgus was just absolutely nutty on defense. It felt like you had these Galactic Legends, or you keep your fingers crossed, and you throw in gas, throw in Traya. And again, this is literally feels like a carbon copy of what's happening back then. But so Sith Eternal, if that world does come, it's probably gonna be like that for me. Would it be the end of the world for me? At least I have Jedi Knight Cal Kestis to handle Malgus now, and then I can maybe dedicate Sith Eternal over to that. But hey, that means you can't even put him on defense. Maybe you want to put Sith Eternal on defense. Supreme Leader Kylo Ren, it was all right. You just got to keep in mind, what does Supreme Leader Kylo Ren need? He needs critical hits to supercharge his ultimate. And unfortunately, what does Malicos Omicron give? As we broke down earlier, critical hit immunity for 2 turns. Can't be dispelled. So it takes a little bit of time to get up and running, but it seems like here it's fine. Now, I only saw a battle that didn't really have the ideal lineup. It was kind of a funny little lineup with like Jedi training Rey, so maybe if it had something else, it may be a different story, but I feel like Malicos should be able to be beaten by Supreme Leader Kyle at the end of the day, because the good thing is here, the stun wasn't even able to be dispelled because it's locked in place. Now, I want to end with this here. There was a lot of discussion, maybe the possibility of Malicos with Rey, because it offers things that might make Starkiller a lot trickier to counter Rey. Now, here's something that often happens, even myself. You get so focused on stopping a pretty cheap counter. I don't want to say cheap, but a non-Galactic Legend counter versus a Galactic Legend, that you accidentally open up the doors for other things that exist out there. And even though there are some things of Malicos that could work with Rey, like he's got the critical hit immunity, all that other fun stuff, and he also does damage to an enemy whenever they're getting turn meter on him. The problem is we saw some people, they're like, oh, okay, and they just threw in their Mon Mothma. Remember, Malicos, he can't get damage immunity because he's not a light side character in the game, and then of course that breaks up the Rey-Ben interaction. So although, yeah, maybe it could have slowed down Starkiller, if someone's bringing in Mon Mothma to beat you, yeah, just, keep Malicos out. At the end of the day, I'm seeing a lot of potential, like I already saw a couple days ago, but I'm seeing even more now. And there's even more we still haven't seen. We haven't seen Malicos of Starkiller. I want to see some more Lord Vader of Malicos inside a Grand Arena. This might just be the third best overall character that Conquest gave in terms of plug and play viability, the usefulness in a variety of different teams. Really excited to see what the future of this guy is. I heard some other rumors that some people got like Qui-Gon Jinn to nuke it, but I don't know how many Omicrons were. I didn't see the gameplay. Could because the Datacron's really juiced up on Qui-Gon right now. But overall, kind of like my predictions were on a lot of you guys out there. It's seeming like we're getting maybe a Galactic Legend, or maybe some dicey Trey Jedi Anakin Skywalker counters, or heck, Malgus could be used. So we have more Granders to come. Big thanks to the community as always. It's really cool seeing everyone kind of have this dialogue together, figuring out this character. I know some people they felt a little let down on the initial performance of Malicos and Squadron, but remember, there were no Omicrons, and even so, when we consider the Squadron viability, it was still pretty decent, and I bet this is going to translate well. Even in territories, imagine Starkiller, Juhani, and Malicos. Baby. This game we're ready to see. So Malicos, totally worth getting. We'll wait, maybe give it some more time, but I feel like Malicos might be the best Conquest character to come out in 2023, although the competition wasn't that great for this year's characters. Thank you guys so much for stopping by. Absolute pleasure to hang out with you guys. Can't wait to do some more Malicos stuff with you. And every time I see you guys, it always makes me want to say how it's great to be in the Empire today.